Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Yesterday on my YouTube channel, I posted a short video. In that video were 3 clips of objects flying through the air. Now, these videos were submitted to me by one of my YouTube subscribers from Virginia, and these videos were taken by a woman while over the last several years in the skies over Brazil, San Diego, and Las Vegas. Now, these images, purportedly show UFOs traveling at incredible speeds throughout over the skies in these 3 different clips. Now, I received some feedback on this. While some people thought that these were pretty neat, these are interesting. Other people noted that no, these are just probably insects or something like that, or birds. And who knows what they are? I don't know. I thought one of the clips, the 3rd clip in this little short video, I thought that was pretty interesting. To me, it looked like it could have been something metallic flying at incredible speeds. You had to slow the video down to actually see it. But regardless what it is, whether it's a flying saucer or an insect or a bird or whatever that's depicted in these videos, in these short videos. It makes me realize just how important it is. That we need the government to step forward already with the facts, with the evidence that they've amassed over the decades. There's no question that the United States government has in its possession evidence that would end the debate once and for all. They have bodies on ice based on a lot of testimony from different people throughout the years, people who like, for instance, who are connected to the Roswell incident. There's evidence there, and it's being withheld from the public. The truth with this matter is being withheld from the public, and it doesn't really matter what kind of video evidence or photo evidence or audio evidence, whatever kind of evidence is presented by anyone in the public. It could be said that it's either something prosaic, or it could be, or if it's when it's really good, it's always stated, it's obviously a fake then. For instance, last year there was a gentleman from Mexico who took 3 very clear pictures of a flying saucer hovering over his house. He pulled out he was walking toward his home in Mexico, and he saw this object just hovering right above his house, and he pulled out his cell phone. He was really nervous at the time, and he failed to take video of it, but he did manage to take 3 quick pictures, and these pictures are stunningly clear. I mean, and it's clear that this object that was hovering over his house was a saucer-shaped object. However, because it was so good, because the evidence in this case was so clear, you have debunkers and naysayers, out there hollering that, it must be a fake then. Well, I didn't think that one was a fake. That guy, from the interviews that were conducted at the time after that incident, it seemed like he was a sincere gentleman, and he was just sharing with the world what he saw, and he took these 3 incredible pictures. Now, getting back to the images that I posted yesterday, those 3 short clips, okay, they're not as credible as they're far away objects. You really can't tell. Yeah, maybe they are insects, but I don't really know. I mean, you have to remember, it was just last year when some Ukrainian astronomers released a paper stating that there's weird objects flying at incredible speeds throughout the skies over the skies in Ukraine. And they put out this paper, and it was a lot of people in the debunker group basically said, there's not, this analysis is incomplete, and it could either be insects or birds. That was from some of the debunkers. Actually, Avi Loeb said he thought it could be military shells. And then these astronomers went back to the drawing board, did some more calculations, and ruled out that it could be military shells or insects or birds, and that these objects are unknown. But again, see, it still ranks up there with unknown. No matter what, it doesn't prove anything. Because as long as we keep playing this game where our governments withhold information, we're never going to get anywhere. Which is always going to be the same old. No matter what no matter what is put out there, right? No matter how good the video imagery or the photograph, it doesn't really matter. There have been photographs, film, and video taken since the late 1940s. And actually before that, there are some images that were captured before the big UFO flap of 1947, which basically launched the era that's never ended to this point. Now we're over 75 years now. We're near 76 of this mystery, of this cover-up. And we're still not getting anywhere. We're still not getting anywhere because no matter what, pictures are never going to prove anything, no matter how good they are. I mean, for instance, in 2007, 2008, and 2009, a Turkish fisherman filmed objects hovering over the sea near his home, and those objects, and he had a really good camera setup, and he was able to zoom in on this object on different occasions, and you could actually not only see the object, but you could actually see beings inside the object, and these beings were decidedly not human. They looked like your classic gray alien, in one case you could see praying mantis type aliens. But again, because that footage was so good, it's deemed by the scientific community and the debunkers, well, that must be a hoax then. Even though there were experts from 4 different countries that looked at those images, analyzed those images, and determined that it is an unknown object. They had no explanation for it, and that it wasn't hoaxed, it was not fake, they weren't puppets, this was a real thing floating out over the sea. That was determined by video experts in 4 different countries at the time. After this stuff came out in 2010, 2011, 2012, where people were looking at this. And this fisherman who filmed it, there was actually on some occasions he had other witnesses with him there. So it doesn't even matter. There were witnesses there. It doesn't matter. They had the video. You could clearly see that there was not only an object floating there, but in some of the cases, some of the video, you could see beings inside the video, inside the objects that were clearly not human. So, I guess the whole what I'm trying to get at here is like it doesn't really matter. We could have all the video evidence, all the photo evidence in the world. It's never going to bring an end to this debate until we get the actual physical proof, like an actual alien in your hands, an alien being that you could present to the world, to the scientific community. Now, of course, on my channel, of course, all the time I'm complaining about the Pentagon. I'm complaining about the cover-up that's been ongoing for decades now, for at least 75 years. It's absurd, but that's why I on my channel I talk about it all the time, because that is where this is going to come to an end, I think. Unless the only other way, I mean, without the government finally telling the truth about this, if the secret control group within the government decides never to tell the truth, then we're never going to get the truth, unless something happens where the aliens do something that makes it undeniable. Where if they say they land somewhere and there's in a place near a major city or something where it becomes an undeniable event, where there's news cameras all around, or a craft crashes somewhere where the secret control group can't send in its crews fast enough to clean up the mess. And there's one other way, if some citizen or citizens somehow come across something, a dead alien body somewhere laying in the woods or the desert or wherever, or remnants of a craft or an intact craft, and that's the only way. Unless we have the physical evidence in hand, it doesn't really matter. I mean, there's been so many good pictures and film and video taken of these things throughout the decades, it still doesn't matter. Just like the video that I posted yesterday on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, it means nothing. It means nothing. You go back in time, you look at, there's the McMinnville UFO. There's that was a great picture taken in 1950 in McMinnville, Oregon, by a farmer named Paul Trent. I mean, he took 2 pictures of a flying saucer. It was witnessed by him and his wife hovering over their property. And he took these two great pictures. Actually, the pictures ended up in Life magazine. It was a big thing at the time. Those people stood by their story all these years, but see, it still doesn't matter. You're still going to have detractors, even to this day, say, oh, it's a fake. Even though other photo experts look at it and say, no, it's real. You know, like, for instance, optical physicist from the Navy, Bruce Maccabee, looked at those McMinnville photos, and he determined that these things were legitimate. This was a legitimate craft up in the sky. It wasn't some kind of a hoax. But again, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Just the other day, I was scrolling through Twitter, and I came across a short video of a flying saucer that was from 1993 that somebody took, you know, over the skies of Florida. And it was a short, then this is, at a time where, people just didn't have access to CGI or anything like that. I mean, CGI was pretty much new at that time. So regular people out there wouldn't be able to do camera tricks like this, but you saw this flying saucer hovering in the sky and then just take off. And it's gone. It just basically disappears. That looked real, but does it matter? In the end, none of this matters until we get the absolute end-all proof presented. None of this stuff is going to ever matter. So it doesn't matter any kind of pictures. Like there's a guy from New Zealand yesterday was sending me a lot of different pictures and videos. This guy says, I'll just use his first name. His first name is David. He says that he's been abducted in his life, and he says that UFOs hover around him all the time. He sees them in the sky above him, and he sends some pictures. But the pictures, I don't know what they are, if these objects are real. There was one video that he sent me with an object floating in the sky and then moving around slowly. But again, it was far away. It's far away. You can't... I can't make a determination on whether it was, what it is. I mean, nobody could. Now, he's adamant that he's followed regularly by UFOs. But again, no matter how many pictures and images he's going to, video and photos he takes, is it going to matter in the end? No, because it never does. It never, ever does. Some of these things could be explained away as prosaic. Those videos I presented yesterday, it could be determined that, okay, yeah, these things are insects, but we really don't know. We just don't know. And even when you get them close up, then you're going to have people say, it must be a hoax then. Those turkey videos, they must be a hoax. That's all that is. So, let's move on. We still don't have the absolute proof that we need to bring this debate to an end. Again, it boils down to my anger. When, you hear me a lot on my podcast talking about the Pentagon and the cover-up and the secret control group. It's very frustrating because I know that there's something there, that they have things in their possession that could end this debate once and for all, because we're never going to do it with images. In fact, people who've been following my YouTube channel and my podcast, I mean, I don't usually bring pictures up there. It's not usual. I'm usually just talking about, most of the things I talk about is the cover-up, some incidents that happen, very credible incidents that have occurred over the years where there's no pictures or there's nothing that really to prove it with. But again, we're never going to get anywhere. Now, there are some places we could be looking at where we could that could help bring an end to this, could end the debate, and I've touched on them recently. For instance, the cattle mutilation phenomenon. Now, that's something that still has not been solved, although we've been talking about this since the late 1960s, and you have people suggesting, well, it must be satanic cults or it must be predators. At the same time, no, it doesn't. None of those explanations conform with how the condition of the cattle or the animals that are found after they're mutilated and a lot of times there are UFOs, as I pointed out in a recent video, that there's UFOs sighted many times and then cattle end up being mutilated. What's going on with that? We've never gotten to the bottom of that. Okay, if some people out there believe it's satanic cults, if some people out there believe it's if they think it's predators, okay, well, where's your proof? There's been no proof ever presented after all these years that we've been over 50 years now. This is something that's been going on since 1967, well over 50 years. that people have been talking about this, but nobody has stepped forward yet with any proof to show that that's what it is. And same goes with UFOs. I think if we were to put a focus, if a scientific group were to focus on cattle mutilations, we might get an answer to the entire UFO question, the UFO problem. It is a problem. So there are things out there where we can't prove it. And then, of course, another place where we could be looking is at physical trace evidence. These things land sometimes. There's been so many cases. I don't know of anybody that's studying landing trace cases that much anymore. I'm sure MUFON has some cases where they look into it, but there was a guy, Ted Phillips, he's now passed on, who for years investigated landing physical trace cases where craft land burned and would land. Beings would get out, leave footprints. The objects would leave marks in the ground. It would burn vegetation. There was evidence. That's evidence. But again, even that is not good enough. Even though Ted Phillips for years gathered all this information, showed that there's a physical change to the soil when these things land. Even though he had all this evidence, it's still not enough. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break and we will be right back. Okay, we are back. Now, I'm talking about these different things, these different areas of the UFO phenomenon that we should be investigating deeper if we want to try to get the absolute end-all evidence. But we're not. We're still. It doesn't seem to matter. I mean, implants have been removed from people, right? And those objects still, even though these unearthly implants have been removed from people, that still, for some reason, doesn't seem to constitute proof of this extraterrestrial presence that is here. So we have cattle mutilations, you have physical trace cases, you have implants removed from people. None of those things is deemed as proof by the scientific community. None of it. And then on top of it, you have all the video evidence, all the film evidence, all the photo evidence. None of it constitutes proof. No matter what is thrown out there, none of this constitutes proof. That, again, is why it is so important to get the government to finally come clean. The faction within the government, rather. I mean, it's not the entire government. There's no way the entire government knows about this. There's no way that the entire United States, that everyone in the Pentagon is brought in on the UFO situation. That's just something that's not going to happen. So again, I just think that we need to get that undeniable evidence. Now, as far as I'm concerned, there are some cases, as far as I'm concerned, that prove that if it was to go to a court of law, it would prove. I've talked about this a number of times. For instance, the Ariel School incident. Now, in Ariel School, you had over 60 kids in September of 1994. I mean, how many times we got to talk about this? Over 60 little kids, elementary school kids, right? In broad daylight, 10:30 in the morning, on a recess outside, a flying saucer. More than one was in the area, but one of them lands, and at least 2 alien beings are seen by these children, and one of the alien beings communicates telepathically to a handful of these kids. And all these kids were, after this incident happened, all these kids are then interviewed by researchers like the late John Mack, who investigated alien abductions. They're interviewed by these different UFO researchers, Cynthia Hines, right? They talk to these kids. It's all on videotape. There was a documentary film that was released last year that basically covered the entire event. That documentary was called Aerial Phenomenon. I've talked about that before. To me, that constitutes absolute evidence, but still, that is not enough. Even though you have there's a whole bunch of little kids that see alien beings. They all drew the same things. Right after this event happened, they were asked to draw what they saw. They all drew these alien beings and a flying saucer, and they all told their stories, and all the stories were the same. So, to me, that's proof. I mean, you're not going to get a bunch of little kids like that are not going to be able to conspire like a bunch of adults might be able to do. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. All these years later now, those kids are all grown up, and they're still telling the same story. To me, that's the best evidence, and that evidence there has nothing. I mean, there's no pictures, right? All we have is the word of these kids, but to me, that's good enough. But again, it's not good enough for everybody else. Again, it's just not good enough because we need a body. We need an alien body, a live alien, something to that effect. We need a craft in hand, material. And here's another thing. The only video, right, that could be deemed as conclusive proof of this extraterrestrial presence would have to be released by the government at this point. I mean, there's just too many ways. I mean, people have access to technology now, video technology they could make anything they want within seconds. I mean, sometimes when I'm preparing, like just recently, I did a video about an incident where a flying saucer flew out of this water pit back in the late 1960s. So when I was creating the thumbnail for that podcast, it took me a couple of minutes. I was able to get a flying saucer against a green screen, and then superimpose that over this body of water, and it looked pretty good. I mean, of course it wasn't real, but it was just for the purposes of making that video, it looked good. And that was only within a couple of minutes. Somebody who really knows what they're doing, because I really don't know what I'm doing when it comes to this stuff. Video production or using CGI or special effects. I'm not really that good at it, but if I'm able to do that, then that means other people are able to do that too easily. That's why it is important to get video proof that comes directly from the government that actually captured these things. Now, we do have some of those leaked videos that started coming out in 2017, like the gimbal and the FLIR, the Go Fast. Those videos, right? They're very compelling. They're very compelling videos. They're showing us something, and it's coming from the government. You have it tracked on. There's radar tracking. I mean, it's something that those people saw. But still, that's still not good enough, because you still have debunkers out there trying to debunk it, stating that does not constitute proof. So again, the only way we're ever going to get to the bottom of this, the only way we're going to ever end the debate, is we need an alien itself somehow. I don't know how, right? An alien creature itself, and or one of its craft. Citizens would have to come up with this evidence themselves somehow, because our government, which I am certain has these things hidden away from the public, a faction of the government, a secret control group, they have these things, right? But they're not sharing them with us. They don't want to, for whatever reason, right? They don't want to share this. And I don't expect them to share it anytime soon. But so we have to come up with the evidence ourselves. I don't know how to accomplish that, really. I mean, again, maybe we could start by, at those cattle mutilation incidents, where if a group of scientists, civilian scientists, were to stake out a certain area, a certain ranch where this seems to be happening all the time, maybe we could come up with some sort of physical evidence. But again, even if you have video, even if you come up with the most compelling video in the world, you're still going to have the detractors. It's never going to be enough until you have actual alien body in hand, or alien some sort of machine manufactured by extraterrestrials, which we just don't have. A metal that we just don't have in the inventory. Something to that effect. A captured craft, a civilian somehow come across a craft and commandeer it. How insane it sounds, but that's where it seems like it's at. That's why I'm always complaining. This is, again, I'm getting back to this. It's a big circle. This is why I complain about the government all the time, because they are keeping this secret from the public. Because I know, as I've talked about numerous times on this podcast, I know for a fact that there's an extraterrestrial presence here, because I've seen one of the craft. I've seen one of these beings. Okay, when I was a kid, of course, I talked about this numerous times. I'll talk about it again here. I saw an alien being when I was a kid. This thing was not human. Whatever it was not human. And it was in my bedroom when I was a kid. And along with it, right, there was this strange electronic humming sound, right? And this whole thing, whatever was going on, it pretty much conked out everyone else in the household. They were unresponsive to my screams and cries over a 20-minute period, right? I'm underneath a blanket. I wake up in the middle of the night, I used to sleep in an attic. I slept on one side of the room. My brother Davey slept on the other side. There was stairs in the middle separating both sides, and a banister around it. You could see through the banister. It was, and I wake up, and the blanket's over my head. The light in the room was left on that night. So it was the whole room was completely bright and illuminated. And through the blanket, I could clearly see this arm that had a hand. It was a smallish arm that had a hand that only had 3 fingers on it. It was getting closer to my head and then further away, closer to my head and then further away. And it just went on and on. I don't know what it was. I had no idea. I never even knew about aliens or alien abductions or anything like that at that time. I had no idea. I thought it was Satan or a demon. I had no idea. The thing, I tried to talk to this thing. I said, "Who's there?" Nothing happened. The thing just kept on doing its thing, moving its hand closer to where my head was, and then further back again, over and over again, would not stop. I peeked out of the blanket. I didn't want to look at this thing's face. I did not want to see what it looked like. I was too afraid. But I was able to peek out of the blanket in the other direction where my brother was, on the other side of the room, and he was facing toward me, my brother Davey. I started yelling to him, and this humming sound, this electronic humming sound that never let up during that entire event, just continued and was somewhat muffling my voice. And he didn't budge. And then I started screaming for my mom and dad. They didn't respond. I went on for like 5 minutes, crying for my mom and dad to come to save the day. Nothing happened. Nothing. This thing just was standing there right by my bed, right beside me, doing with his hand. I only had three thick fingers, right, where I was on this weird looking hand, and they came to almost points at the tips. It was a very strange kind of hand. It took me 10 years to realize, of course, like I talked about before, it took me 10 years to realize that this thing was extraterrestrial. I had no idea at that time. It took me 10 years after, watching some documentary on TV one night, right, about alien abduction. And then it took me a little bit, but I put 2 and 2 together finally. I was like, that's what that thing was. That was an alien. And then, of course, in 1994, during a nighttime fishing trip, me and my friend, he calls me up. He goes, "Yeah, I got permission to go fishing at this private lake, Beach Mountain Lakes near Hazleton, Pennsylvania." I was like, "Yeah, okay." So he doesn't want to fish at the lake though. He wants to go to this little pond beside the lake. So we go there, right? And we're fishing. It was in the evening. We got there around 6:00 at night, somewhere around there, 5, 6. And anyway, we were fishing for hours. We weren't catching anything. And then around 10:00 at night, I turn around to get something out of the tackle box, and I could see these 3 gigantic headlights right behind the trees. But these weren't regular headlights; these were gigantic, lined up horizontally, moving behind the trees. And then it came into a clearing. It was one solid object, and it was moving silently. It came to where within 20 feet of me. It was only 2.5 stories off the ground. My buddy starts shining a flashlight on the bottom of it, right? I got scared. I was like, "We got to get the hell out of here." Then the thing started moving away in a different direction. And then we jumped in his truck and we're driving away, right, down this dirt road, totally shocked, right? And he had to stop for a minute because there was at least 20 deer that were running away from the direction that thing just flew. So now here's the thing. Now let's say I had a camera way back in the day, back in 1977 when I saw the alien being, and I snapped a picture of it. Would that have ended this debate? Say I would have pulled that, say for some reason, say I would have had a camera underneath the blanket that night and pulled the blanket down and took a picture of this, of whatever this alien thing was, right? Right? And say it turned out really sharp. Would that have ended this debate? No. It would have been deemed a fake. Say I would have had a camera in 1994 during that fishing trip and that object, even though it was within 20 feet of me and only 2.5 stories off the ground. Say I would have somehow snapped a couple of, 3 or 4 pictures of this thing. Would that have ended the debate? No. It would have done nothing. There would have been people who would say, "Oh, this is just faked. It's totally fake. This guy faked this." That's what it would have been. See, that's where we are. It's still like this. This is how it is. And it doesn't matter. Again, all these videos and film, it doesn't really matter. It comes down to the most proof is from what people say, the experiences of people, real people who are don't understand what's going on, people who get abducted by aliens, people who are contactees of aliens, those people. right? Now, some people say they have good experiences, but a lot of people say they have bad experiences. Okay, whatever, right? But see, again, there's these beings are so much smarter than we are. They are so much more technologically advanced than we are that we have no chance. We have no way. There's no way. I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't seem, no matter what we think we can do, nothing we can do. It seems we can't get that evidence, right? They have complete control over us. I know that. I have experienced this, right? So I know what these other people go through when they say they're abducted. I mean, for all I know, I might have been getting abducted my whole life. I have no recollection of that. However, I do know that one incident when I was a kid was real. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't sleep paralysis. It wasn't anything like that. That there was a being in my room that wasn't human, right? And along with that being, there was this humming sound. But see, again, these things have an advantage over us. They're just so much more advanced than we are technologically that we don't have a chance. They have it all figured out. So I guess, again, the only way we're going to get to the bottom of this or end this debate is for the government to come clean, unless something happens that makes it, that the aliens screw up somehow or deliberately show their cards, show themselves to the world somehow. Without those things, I mean, it's up to the government. That's why people like me are always complaining about the cover-up, the ongoing cover-up, the nonsensical cover-up that continues to this day. I mean, again, people were all excited. Oh, we have this Arrow office. We have all these hearings. There's whistleblowers stepping forward. And I really hope, I pray against hope that something comes out of this, that somehow this somehow is the beginning of prying that the lid off of the control group. I really hope. But until that happens, we're going to go through this. It doesn't matter what kind of videos anybody shows on YouTube or Twitter or on the internet. Doesn't matter about how many classic film photographs you show. For instance, now there's talk of James Fox has been talking about some guy. He's talked about this a lot, right? There was this guy named Chuck Clark who lives in Nevada who filmed this incredible, or he didn't film it. There was two people he knew, two young guys he knew that were out in the Nevada desert, and a UFO was hovering over their car, and they got this incredible video of this with a camcorder back in the 90s, in the early 90s at some point. And Fox initially saw this video. This guy named Chuck Clark obtained this video from these young men and got a videotape copy of it and showed it to James Fox. And he's also showed it to other UFO investigators as well over the years. Now there's been talk that this is the best footage of all time. But again, even if it comes out, do I want to see it? Of course I do. I can't wait to see it. I hope to God. We do have some still images from this, apparently. They've been posting them on Twitter, but we don't have the video. They say if you'll see this video, you're going to be convinced. Well, I'm already convinced. I already saw one of these beings. I saw one of these craft with my own eyes. But it's not going to be the definitive proof we need. We need an alien itself. I don't know, either dead or alive. An extraterrestrial being, dead or alive. In the public domain, not hidden in Wright-Patterson Air Force Base on some ice box under guard. We need an actual alien being, right? One way or the other, somehow. I don't know how. Again, because they're so technologically advanced than we are. I mean, if they're coming here from someplace, I mean, so I say extraterrestrial, but I use that as a placeholder, right? Because we really don't know where they're coming from. They could be interdimensional, like some people say. I don't know, right? They're not human. They're a non-human intelligence. That's all we really could say. But for the time being, I'm going to stick with extraterrestrial. I think they're coming from a different planet. But again, until we get that definitive proof, it doesn't matter how good the video is. Unless it comes from the only way, right, is if a video comes from the government accompanied with documentation and scientific evidence, actual proof of the craft itself, where they actually open the doors and let the skeptics and debunkers look at these objects, inspect them, see the dead bodies, see the reports on the physiology of dead alien beings that were recovered at a crash site. Until we get that, that's the only way we're going to end this debate. Again, unless the aliens do something spectacular. Like even more spectacular than the Phoenix Lights or Stephenville, any of those cases. Something incredibly spectacular that puts an end to this. Something, an aerial school incident, for instance, but on a global scale. Right? An aerial school incident on a global scale. That's the only way. That's the only thing I think could bring this debate to an end. Anyway, until next time.